Boom, I'm in the room. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Tim Heale podcast and everyday conversations regarding mental health. We've got a guest in tonight and we can have a chat around the subject of mental wellbeing. So we're trying to get away from calling it mental health purely because people take it as a negative. So if we call it mental wellbeing, that kind of takes it away, makes it okay to talk about. So because there's nothing on the telly, that's probably why you're here watching me. We're coming to you live from the old Heale Manor, Lord Heale here. So what else do we know? You can buy me a coffee. It's not compulsory. You can also subscribe to the channel, which is free. If you didn't know that, it's free. Who knew? You can sign up for free. And if you can give us a thumbs up, you can click the bell icon. Apparently, if you click the bell icon and click all, you get notified when I go live. Who knew? That's a great thing. And I'm also, it's coming up next month, I'm off to the podcast show in London, where I'm going to meet up with some of the other guys that I collaborated on for the podcast host mastery. And we became a #1 best-selling authors on Amazon. So I collaborated with 15 other guys and girls. There you go. Right. So without too much further ado, every Tuesday we've got the old live stream quiz, live stream awesome quiz every Tuesday, goes at 8 o'clock. So if you like your quizzes, come and join us. It's 30 questions, test your general knowledge, see how clever you are, or not, as the case may be. And all you need is a pen and a bit of paper. Tune in, and all you need to do is just pop your scores in the chat box once I've given them to you. So, the idea of this particular show, everyday conversations regarding mental health, mental well-being, is we're trying to take the stigma out of it. We're trying to make it a comfortable subject to be able to talk to. Around the dinner table, you can do it. So, without too much further ado, I'm going to bring in my guest. So, here we go then. Welcome, Jerry.
Hey, thanks for having me on today.
You're welcome. So, Jerry, you're over in over the pond in Orlando at the moment.
Yes, that's right. I'm in Orlando, Florida, doing some business and some I kind of do personal development a lot when I travel. Speaking of mental well-being, so I'm doing a lot of that, kind of in between work.
Brilliant. Oh, evening, Catherine. One of our regulars has joined us this evening. So, welcome, Catherine. Any other of the gang around tonight? We missed you on Tuesday, by the way. So, one of our regulars on the quiz. Anyway,
Awesome.
So Jerry, mental well-being. How do you go about doing that? How do you get your victims, as it were? And what's the subject do you cover around it?
I think for me, I'm very big in physical well-being as well. So I spend a lot of time exercising and staying in good physical condition. And professionally, I work with people on their financial health and well-being. So when I think of like mental health, mental well-being, for me, a lot of it is preventative stuff, things that for example, if I'm doing physical, I'm going to exercise, I'm going to eat right, I'm going to make sure I get fresh air. And there's a lot of equivalent things with mental well-being where we can kind of take charge of it. And it's something where we can, continue to build on it and build up, more endurance, more strength in that area, and kind of be healthier overall mentally. So that's kind of my take on it, is more proactive. And I think a lot of times, and I love your show because I think it is a bit of a taboo topic. It's something people are maybe not always comfortable bringing up. And so because of that, we tend to wait till it's too late. We tend to wait till it's at that breaking point before we do anything about it.
You're so right there. I mean, so many people, because it over the years it's been one of those sort of stigmas. It's been, I mean, brush it under the carpet. I mean, here, have one of these. Oh, what's that? It's a man up pill. Well, no, it's the wrong way about going about it. Preventative is a lot better than trying to cure it. Once you've gone down that particular route of, and a lot of it's come from trauma, and a lot of it's come from childhood trauma. So people have been carrying this trauma, this mental problem for decades, and it's not until the light bulb moment comes, and they see that it's okay to talk about it. There are people out there that will help them, the likes of yourself and myself, that are trying to make it an everyday conversation, to make it comfortable for people to talk about, to make it okay not to be okay. And if you're not feeling 100%, you're not feeling like yourself, then there's there's millions of people that will sit there and listen. Sometimes that's all it takes, is just to somebody just to listen to your problem, and then it's solved. So from your perspective, I mean, educating people to prevent it in the first place, keeping themselves physically fit, keeping their dietary needs fit. I mean, there's so many junk food diets out there. There's so many people just don't know how to eat healthy, and that is part of. I mean, having a healthy diet is a good way of keeping your physical well-being, and that then knocks on to your mental well-being.
Yeah, so you feel good about yourself after.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the key things is to like yourself in the first place. And if you like yourself, you're halfway there to being a bit and building some,
there's
robustness as well.
Yeah, there's a quote that I love, and it basically it talks about being a good friend to yourself, and I think that's a lot of where it starts. Is like you said, it may be funny to think about, but we really do need to like ourselves. We need to be proud of the things we do. We need to acknowledge our accomplishments. We need to give ourselves understanding. And a lot of times, for me, like last year, just to kind of give you guys some transparency, I went through some really big losses. I went through a divorce. I was a victim of a fraud fund with investments. I lost a majority of my net worth. It was about a 6-month period. Just seemed like everything that could go wrong did. Right. And so, that's one of those moments where, you're kind of like, okay, I'm kind of at rock bottom. Right. And I have to kind of, put up with what's happening and then find a way to continue moving back along and kind of rebuilding and putting things back together. And so, when you're at that level and it, whether you fell from, a really high place or whether it was, maybe relatively small, it's still kind of a loss, and it still does have an effect and an impact. So, one of the things that I did is I made sure I had someone that I knew I could trust, that I could talk to. And that was, a big part of, being able to just communicate and not necessarily, were they giving me solutions even or telling me here's what you should do. They're just listening, and that's a lot of times what it is just having someone that, you can listen and you can let out that negative energy that's associated with those experiences, and you can, kind of just voice what's happening and what's going on. And a lot of times that is a solution in and of itself. Right. And so that was a big one for me. And then, another one I believe in too, Tim, is finding little wins. Right. What are the little things that I can get done, and I can look at it and say, okay, that's a win. I did this. I accomplished that. I finished that. It wasn't maybe the biggest thing in the world, but it's something I can look at and build confidence and, enjoy the fact that I got something done and I had that win.
Yeah. I mean, one of those things that you mentioned there is somebody to talk to. And sometimes people mean well, and they ask you, are you all right? And then they say, you say, yeah, I'm okay. Well, are you really all right? You don't seem yourself. At that point, that's when you start opening up. That's the point where they say, well, I haven't got time to listen now. and that can have a
Mhm.
real detrimental effect. So when you open up to somebody, just hope that they got the time to listen. And sometimes that's all
Mhm.
it needs to square you away. But and anybody out there that does like to ask people how they are and how they really are and start a conversation, just make sure you've got the time to invest in that person, to listen to what they've got to say, and don't mug
Mhm.
them off halfway through. Just whatever you've
Yeah.
got to go on to, put off, just so you can finish off the conversation with them, because that will help them no end. And I'm sure you've found that.
Yeah, I think the listening is a big deal, and I think for those that are starting those conversations and you're on the end that's listening, one thing that I try and really do, and I found when I'm the person maybe communicating what's happening has been very helpful, is when you're the listener and you're having that conversation, do your best not to evaluate for the person. Um, and then also not to invalidate what happened to them, like like you said, here's your man card, just tough up, like that's
Yeah,
not what's wanted and needed in that moment, right? And the other thing too is, a lot of times the person may not be necessarily looking for your opinion on what they should have done or what they should do or what your view was on what happened, because it kind of then takes the conversation away from them and it makes it about you. Right now, I'm telling them what I
yeah,
think about it, and it kind of flips it. So I think it's important to listen, but it's also important not to evaluate, not to invalidate, and just be there. Just be communication solves a lot of things.
absolutely. Well, we've got some more guys that have joined us. Hi, Keith. Hi, Cheryl. Hi, Vanessa. Thanks for joining in the conversation this evening. We've got a guest here, Jerry, and we're having a conversation about mental well-being this evening and how Jerry goes about it. He's a coach as well. He coaches people on how to live their life a little bit better, to get their mental well-being under control, shall we say?
Mhm.
so, so
That's a
from
good way
from
to
that,
put it.
yeah. So from that point of view, we're looking at people's mental well-being, and I think if you can understand yourself and understand when you're not feeling right yourself, then at the early stages, when like for you, things started going wrong and bad things normally come along in threes, so it all goes p-tong. But it's recognising that something's not right, and then if you can do something about it early enough, it can save a lot of problems down the line. So
It can.
yeah. So how did you go about recognising it in yourself? Obviously, you started going p-tong at some stage in the not far distance.
Yeah, for me it was interesting because I've spent many years kind of working on, for me, preventative mental wellness. And, if we liken it to like the physical wellness side of things, we have exercise, right? And so for me, mental wellness, the form of like exercise, for me has been reading. I do a lot of reading on personal development and positive thinking and trying to understand how the human mind works and emotions and behaviors. And again, that's one of those areas where it's very vital. Like we all have them, right? We all have emotions, we all have behaviors, we all have ups and downs and different things. Never once in my life, I don't know how it is in the UK. In the US, I was never taught about any of those things, right? Like you're this
No,
individual that has these feelings and thoughts, and it's like, okay, well, what are those? Where did they come from? How do we understand them? What do we do with them? That was never something that I was educated on. So for whatever reason, I always had interest in it. And so for many years now, in my free time, I study that. It helps me understand myself better. It helps me understand other people better. I'm a business owner, so it helps me understand my employees and my clients. And it just makes life much easier when you can kind of think with what's going on in people's heads and what's going on in their worlds. Right. So, all of that to kind of lead up to, 6 months or so ago, like you said, bad things happen in threes, right? So I had a fraud case happen with investments I was in. My net worth plummeted. I went through a divorce, and then to add to that, I didn't get to keep my dog in the divorce. So that's the third one, is I lost the dog too.
That's probably
In
the worst
America,
one
we
of the
would
lot,
call
isn't
that a
it?
country song. Yeah, the dog was a tough one. I'll tell you what. In America, we call that a bad country song. I lost my
Yeah.
dog. My wife left. Yeah, so I was
Old
looking a
Yeller.
bit like a country music song. Old Yeller for sure. So that all kind of occurred, and so because I had spent time with preventative mental well-being and doing, studying on this stuff, I kind of knew what to do, and I was like, okay, well, first thing I need to do is I need to, basically start putting myself in environments that are going to brighten me up. So I remember I would go for walks. Out here in Florida, it's beautiful. I could go right by the water. I could see the ocean. I had the sunshine. I had the palm trees. So just that kind of like got me out of that funk where I'm like, okay, I'm enjoying the beauty of nature, and I could see that, and I could get the fresh air. And so that was an immediate thing for me. And then for me, I always feel better when I do physical exercise. There's just something about it when your blood starts flowing and your body starts letting out those endorphins and things that you get because you're exercising. That always helps me. And so being active is a good thing that I did to handle it. But I had one specific person that I knew I could go to, and so I went to this person and I was telling them what was going on, and they listened. And so that was something kind of like we said with the communication. And when they saw that I was maybe doing things that weren't necessarily going to help me feel better, they would make suggestions of things that they knew would help me feel better. Right? I wanted to take a nap. I wasn't feeling good. I kind of wanted to just turn the whole world off for a little while and sleep it off. And she's like, "Hey, that's cool. You could do that, but why don't you go take a walk? You like walks. Walks always make you feel better." And so that was something where I was like, okay, that's a good idea. Right. So that was kind of what I did leading into it. And then really, for me, I started learning that the way I feel is my responsibility. And so when I started understanding that, there are, past memories, traumatic experiences, what can happen is in the present time, a situation comes up that reminds me of one of those things. Right. And this happens a lot. You have a military background. This happens a lot with soldiers and veterans.
Yeah.
Everyday life situations remind them of something on the battlefield, and it kind of just clicks in, and it's almost like they're there again. And I think a lot of us have similarities, whether it's as intense as being in a battlefield or, childhood abuse or whatever it might be. It's very interesting what things can kind of set that off, that we might not know that that's what's happening. It's reminding me of this past experience, and I'm not aware of it when it's occurring. But that's sometimes why it can have such a heavy-handed effect. So, that was something that I knew and I learned about. And so I was like, okay, what is it that this is reminding me about? And that kind of helped me understand it better. And then I focused on, I can't undo the past, but I can do the future. So I focused on the future. I was like, I can't go back and change the past. I can't make these memories go away. Talking about it does help, and that's a way you can relieve some of the emotional strain that goes with memories like that. But in present time, I can start doing things to make my future better, so it doesn't have to be like the past. And so that's really what I did. I believe, being productive, being busy, completing, work and getting tasks done, and especially when they involve helping other people. I really feel good when I help other people. And so that's an area for me of mental wellness. When I'm not feeling so great, I'll look at how can I go help others. And, whether that's volunteering my time, whether that's, being that helping hand for someone else, it kind of takes my attention off of my problems and it puts it on, how can I contribute to others instead? And so those are a lot of the things that I did to really kind of come out of that funk. And the nice thing is it comes in waves, right? So it wasn't a permanent season. Once I was kind of through that, I was like, okay, I feel better now. I can go about and start kind of rebuilding some of these things I lost.
Yeah, maybe get another dog. Mind you,
Yeah,
dogs aren't conducive to travel, are they?
not too much. Yeah.
They do curtail things a bit. I mean, we've got a dog, and we've had to change the way that we go on holiday, for instance. We have to think about him. Archie the ship's cat, he's not a problem at all. But
Cats are a bit like houseplants.
yeah, so what we've decided to do, because we sold the boat, and I do miss the boat a lot, but we decided that this year we're going to go and do some camping. So we bought a new tent and a new cooker and bits and pieces, and we're going to take off and just go for odd days during the week because we're retired. So and
Yeah.
just go and camp somewhere for a night and then come back. The ship's cat, he's fine. He'll just leave his food out and he squares himself away. So that's what we're going to do this year, and hopefully that'll.
The dog will love the camping.
Yeah, just trying to control him a little bit. he's a little border terrier. That he's a proper terrier. So that's our plans for this year, and really looking forward to going camping. I went camping last year by myself. Well, I say by myself. There was about 10,000 other motorcyclists all turned up at the Adventure Bike Riders Festival, and so 3 days, 2 nights camping, and it was great fun. They got bands on and all that, and all the manufacturers are there with all the different bikes you could go and have a ride around on. And I went round for a couple of days interviewing people for that I put out as a video, and I got a guy called Carl Fogarty who used to race for Ducatis, and I managed to get him as an interview, which was great. So that I put that into the show, and that was good fun. And I came back from that, felt really, really good. I mean, normally my body's in bits. Underneath this gorgeous exterior, there's an absolute train wreck going on. But I managed to cope with it. So I've booked to go on it again this year. So I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully it'll be a really good day out. Or good weekend.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun time.
Yeah. But on the physical side of stuff, I mean, my days are going down and pumping iron in the gym and going for sort of 20-mile runs. They're over. So,
yeah.
But I just readjust, down test and adjust and do something slightly different. So I do keep myself relatively fit as I can by just going out for walks with the dog. And that's quite good fun, taking him down the beach and letting him run riot and chasing seagulls and and crows.
Yeah.
So that's good fun watching him. And then Artie the ship's cat, he's a funny little bugger at times, but he'll come and sit with me in the evening when I'm watching the telly, and yeah, that's nice. So he's not a lap dog. He's not a lap cat, not like the dog. The dog's a lap dog. He'll come and sit on your lap, and sit on your head if he can get away with it. But he'll sit on my lap, and Artie will be sat beside us, and he likes his tin stroked, and that's a really calming effect. So animals can be really good for your mental well-being as well. Tim moved on a 100-mile
animals
runs.
definitely can.
So Cheryl's just put Tim moved on to 100-mile runs. Yeah, the old endurance runs. Did that once. Won't do it again. did a couple of marathons. Marathons aren't me. Marathons definitely aren't me. And
no, me neither.
Walk for miles, carrying heavy weights on my back, and I've been forced to do it.
Yeah.
Those days are over. Pack light.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you got to adjust it as you go. I'm 30. I'm about to turn 31, so I try and still keep myself in pretty good shape, and I'm at the age where I can still really push my body, my muscles, joints, tendons, all that are still in good shape. But I think that's part of it too. As you get older, is making those adjustments and just being aware of what your body can take, what your mind can take, and keeping yourself limber but not pushing it too far.
Yeah, I'd love to have a body of 31. When I was 31, I was probably the fittest I was ever. In fact, just before that, I think I was about 28 when I did Special Air Service selection. And I got all the way through to test week. Was on the long march at the end, and I was about 19 hours in, about an hour or so from finishing, and dark o'clock at night, foot went down a rabbit hole, and my body went round my knee with a £60 pack on my back. I woke up in hospital
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine.
and failed the course, failed to complete the course. So
Yeah,
yeah, knee's never been right since, but yeah, one carries on. So we've got some other
yeah.
people
Knees can
joined
be a
in.
tough one.
Yeah, evening, Linda. Hello, hello, hello. Here is the dependable uniform, 007, I think. Catherine says stroking a pet lowers the blood pressure. It does.
Huh?
It's great. Cheryl says, question, what do you recommend if somebody doesn't want to go outside, just wants to stay in bed and hide? Well, you go in there and grip them, don't
Good
you?
question.
Get up, get up. Can't just lay there. Get up.
I think
Go outside.
I
Get
think
fell in outside.
I think we've all experienced that where you're like, I just don't want to get out of bed today. I think everyone's had that moment once or twice. So, you know, I think that's a good question, and sometimes it's needed. I don't think it's a long term solution. But if you are just worn out and exhausted, I get it. And if you need
Yeah,
some rest and some recuperation, I think that's totally fine. But sometimes you've got to kind of be your own kind of coach, right? If you know that, okay, it's time to get out of bed. It's time to put the boots on and go
yeah,
outside and kind of face life. Sometimes you've got to have the ability to kind of be your own mental coach and motivate yourself on to do those things. And I would say for me, whenever I've experienced that, and maybe you've seen the same thing, Tim, I usually feel pretty good after I do it. I
yeah,
have this, maybe some resistance to it leading up, and there could be some fear and some anxiety. But once I do it, I'm like, oh, that wasn't so bad. And I actually kind of feel good that I did. Um, and that's the mind can play tricks on us a little bit where, it can make us think there's this, these dark clouds and thunder and lightning and scariness and things. And, a lot of it is kind of our own imaginations at work. And when we actually go out there and face it, a lot of times it's not as bad as maybe we thought it was going to be. And it also helps build confidence because on the back end, you're like, wow, I faced that. I can do that now.
yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that I mean, it's okay sometimes to sort of have a couple of days rest, total rest in bed.
Mm-hmm.
Don't want to get up, hide under the covers, recharge the batteries. But you know when it's time to get up because you've got to go to the loo anyway. So once you've done that, you might as well stay up. go get yourself a cup of coffee and and then get on with the day. And you'll be surprised how good you feel once you start doing something. Once your batteries have recharged. I mean, lots of people go through work far too hard and get burnout. And I wouldn't say burned out, then it's really difficult to recharge your batteries, especially if you've got to keep going, etc.
Mm-hmm.
We've got some more questions coming in there. I've been on a stream with G-Man. I have. That's why I said deplorable '07. I think that's what it said, deplorable, yeah. Asking this if you see this is family member or friends, how to help them. Yes. If you see somebody withdrawing into themselves and you notice that they're not their normal self, then make sure you've got a little bit of time and go and ask them how they are, how they're feeling. Are they really all right? No, are you really, really all right? And get them to open up. And I think that's one of the keys. Then when they start to open up, use these twice as much as that. So you get your ears
Mm-hmm.
into listening mode, give them 100% of your concentration, listen to what they're saying, and then engage in their conversation. And try and make them feel good about themselves, because they probably are. They just need that little bit of
Mm-hmm.
a nudge to open up. And once they do, then they open the floodgates generally, and afterwards they generally will feel better about themselves. And if they're suffering from a trauma,
Yeah, and
it's quite important if they've witnessed a trauma of some sort, and it doesn't have to be on a battlefield. It can be something like a car accident, not involved in a car accident, but seen a horrific car
Mm.
accident, that's a traumatic event that can play on people's minds. If they say that they've seen something like that, then rather than open up the wounds, rather than sort of try and re-traumatise them, just say it's okay. It's not unusual to have the feelings that you're having. Try not to sort of talk about the actual event, but the how they should be or how they're likely to be feeling around it. And it's not unusual to have sort of keep seeing it in your mind's eye, dreaming about it, and slowly over time that does tend to dissipate, and to be able to talk about the incident without re-traumatizing is a good way
Mm.
of helping somebody through that event. And the earlier you can do it, the better. In the military, we started using something called TRIM, which is trauma incident management. So when the guys have had a traumatic incident, say a bomb blast or something out on a patrol, a team goes in at the 3 day point, sort of 72 hours after the event. They'll look at who's involved with it, whether they're directly involved with it, whether they were indirectly involved with it, and they'll look at the individuals and work out who needs a one-to-one talk, who needs a group discussion, and who needs an overall brief of what's happened. And then after they've assessed people, they'll work out who needs to maybe keep an eye on, and then they go back in at the 30 day point. And if anybody's struggling still with it, then they can signpost them on to specialist help. And then they go back in at the 3 month point, and hopefully things should have calmed down and got back to some sort of normality then. And again, any time during that period, if somebody is struggling, then they could get specialist help. And I think that's come about through decades of looking at trauma, and particularly battlefield trauma, but it can be any sort of trauma. And dealing with it early on will help a lot. The guys in the Falklands, for instance, there was two groups. All the fighting guys. Some of the guys were actually flown back after recapturing Stanley. They flew back to the UK, and there was another lot that came back on the ships that took 2 or 3 weeks to get back. The guys that flew back on the flights to a hero's welcome and all that, those are the guys that have been struggling a lot more than the guys that came back on the ships. The guys that came back on the ships were able to talk about their experiences and stuff like that, and decompress, for want of another word. The guys that were flown back didn't have that same opportunity, and those are the guys that we're now seeing with PTSD, and some of them complex PTSD, because it wasn't dealt with at the time. But we are talking 40 odd years ago now. And we didn't have trim back in those days. But the fact that they came back on the ships, they got the decompression, they got the trim anyway. So there you go.
Yeah.
That's about trauma. So if you know somebody that's gone through a trauma of some sort, they've seen a trauma, then that's a way of dealing with it, is to keep an eye on them, to let them know that it's not unusual to be feeling the way they are if they're not getting sleep, if they're revisiting it in their mind's eye. So those are normal things, and they over time they will dissipate. That's my two penny worth on that subject.
Yeah. I like that, and I think the thing to keep in mind on that too, you kind of hit it on the head, was that every individual is unique. We're all different personalities, but from a physiological and psychological standpoint, we're all wired very much similar. And so one thing that can happen is when you do experience trauma, it's very easy to feel isolated, like you're the only one that feels that way, or maybe you're the only one that's got that kind of experience. And I think that's part of why it feels like, okay, I can't really talk about this, is there's that seeming isolation, when in reality, everyone pretty much has a similar response to trauma. We all have similar emotional experiences, and sure, the situations are different and the results are different, but it's something all of us have experienced. And I think it goes back to what you said at the very beginning of the show. Most people, they don't probably realize, but there are millions of almost anyone you could mention it to, and they can relate and they can talk about it. And I find it very interesting that on the trim, like you mentioned, that was one of the first things, is just, let's talk about it. Let's have a communication with that soldier, and let them kind of talk about what happened, and see what's going on, and be there and listen. And I'm not sure, it'd be interesting to see, um, kind of the experience of someone that's been, maybe on a longer term, like you mentioned, where it's been 40 years or so, kind of
Mm.
what the handling is there, and kind of, if it's still listening and talking, or if it's a little bit more that needs to be done. But, I do think if you catch it early, give it some time to settle, but catch it early, and it usually is a very good handling.
Yeah, I think on particularly sort of some sort of childhood trauma. I know a young fella that his dad committed suicide, and
Mm.
he carried the fact that he thought it was his fault that his dad did it
Wow.
for about 15 years, and it's only recently where he's been able to talk about it and get some more facts around the subject that
Hmm.
it wasn't his fault at all. But he'd been carrying that for years. Um, and I think that lots of children go through that sort of thing where if their parents split up, they blame themselves for it when it's not their fault. But they carry that wound, that that feeling that they've caused it
Hmm.
for decades, and I think that's where a lot of the childhood trauma comes in, that comes back and
Hmm.
bites them later in life. I was talking to somebody just the other week who was bullied at school, and they carried that with them for a long time, and it wasn't until they was in their 50s that they realised
Hmm.
that it wasn't their fault that they were bullied. And generally with bullies, it's the bully that's the insecure one. It's the bully that
Yeah.
um, is the coward, and they just pick on somebody because they can. And if you stand up to a bully, then they will go and find somebody else. That's the problem with bullies. They will always find somebody else to pick on.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
again, it's one of those things that is being tackled. But it will always happen. I mean, kids in schools, they will there will always be that. I mean, kids can be really horrible to each other, and they don't realise that the
Hmm.
effect that they might have on somebody for the rest of their lives. And I think
Yeah.
if we could go down that road of saying, look, bullying is not acceptable. This is the sort of problems that you can cause somebody by bullying them, or if you are a bully,
Hmm.
this is the sort of impact that you can have on somebody's life. So be nice to people. And I think that
Yeah.
message needs to get out a lot. And I think we can do
I
it,
think so.
particularly with this show as well.
Yeah, and one thing you mentioned that I think it says a lot about the quality of goodness that most human beings have, is that, when somebody, you mentioned your friend, that his dad had committed suicide, he felt like it was his fault.
Yeah.
And the child whose parents got divorced. In the trauma, one of the things that I can really appreciate about the individual is that that's how responsible they're trying to be, right? Like they want to help,
Yeah.
right? So dad committed suicide, and that individual immediately was thinking about, like, how could I have done something? How was I responsible? And it really is a desire to want to contribute and help and prevent the situation. And in some cases, it's like, you couldn't have done anything, that just like with the bully,
Mm.
like if if you change something, it doesn't guarantee that the bully wouldn't have gone after you. But so I can just really acknowledge within the individual the responsibility level of wanting to help, and I think that that's really where that maybe feeling of guilt kind of comes from, as they wanted to help and couldn't. And
Yeah.
it just shows how good and wholesome people really are. And somebody that's experiencing that, it shows how good of an individual they are. I think that that's all the more reason to listen to them, to help them, because that's a person that, if we can get them feeling better and kind of in a better situation, then they can help, and they're going to be able to have a great life and have an impact with a lot of people, because they have that mindset of wanting to help.
So Linda's just put something on. I can't stay. Oh, I can't stay. It's 4:30 in the pre-dawn. Great advice. So, I mean, that's probably lots of people's worst time is that sort of 3, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, where the demons start to come and play on their minds. Certainly does, or did for me. So those early hours of the morning, just waiting for the dawn to turn up, and it's just, I mean, you're by yourself, and your mind starts doing overtime, particularly if you've not been able to sleep properly anyway. Those sort of early hours of the morning are hard, especially when there's nobody to talk to, and nobody really wants a phone call at 4 o'clock in the morning. I've got a problem.
Yeah.
But that's probably the time of the day that most people that would want some real help. So there's a tip. If somebody
Probably.
rings you at 4 o'clock in the morning asking for a bit of help, don't hang up on them. Just have a listen. There you go, bit of sound advice.
Yep. Yep. And I think, if you don't have anyone in that moment, for me, journaling has always been good. If it is 3, 4 in the morning, you don't have someone to talk to, it does sometimes helps just to write your thoughts down. Getting them out of your head, when it's in our head, like you said, the mind can do overtime. So we start over analyzing it and really dwelling on it. So sometimes literally just getting it out of my head onto a piece of paper, communicating it, even if it's to myself in writing, that's sometimes a workable coping mechanism till you can go have that conversation with someone.
Yeah. I mean, that is a good way of dealing with it. I mean, if you're, I mean, journaling is a really good way of getting your thoughts out, getting those little demons out of your head, and you put them down on a piece of paper, and that piece of paper then you just screw up and throw away. That demon's gone.
Yeah.
It takes a little bit of a mindset to get in that way. It's something I tell people about worry. I mean, there's no point in worrying whatsoever.
Yeah.
If there's something you're worrying about and there's nothing you can do about it, it is pointless worrying. If you can do something about it, then you can do something about it, and there's no need to worry about it because you can do it. So that's the simple answer. If you can't do anything, don't worry. If you can do it. Worry. But it does take a little bit of working to get that mindset there. Lots of people suffer from anxiety, and that's caused by worry. And what's Catherine just put? Oh, we got some comments coming in. Great, great convo from Katie. Evening, Katie. Good idea to journal, rejournal. I did that the other day when I was highly stressed and couldn't tell anyone about it. Catherine's put, if my egg owns, I'm struggling at reading this, and I are awake. What you been drinking at night? we text each other. All right. Yeah. If we're both awake and have a conversation, it's not. We catch up. Brilliant. Yeah. So friend. So if you know your friend struggles at sleeping, Get hold of them during the night. So,
Yeah. And I think Tim, one of the things too that can kind of exacerbate it is lack of food, lack of sleep.
yeah,
I've had moments where I felt really on edge and very stressed out and that type of thing. And I ate something and I felt immediately better, or I slept, and I let my body rest and I felt immediately better. So sometimes that is a good handling. Is okay. Am I hungry? Am I tired? Because when you are, your body's worn down. It takes even more mental energy just to function as a person. Then if I
yeah,
have that stressful situation or trauma on top of that, it really can add another layer that doesn't need to be there, and that can often be eliminated. Cheryl says water too. Yeah, am I hydrated?
yeah,
Just kind of those basics. Are those basics taken care of?
yeah, absolutely. Catherine says, my counsellor told me put my feelings down on paper. Hang on, down on paper, get it all out, and then burn it. Good. That's like just throwing it away. So, but if you burn it, it's gone. There's no coming back from burning.
A bit more of a statement there. Yeah,
Yeah,
I like that.
brilliant. So, yeah, I think we've covered a lot this evening. There's lots
Hmm.
of positive stuff that we've managed to get across tonight. I think that's really good.
Yeah.
And we've had some really good conversations. So, if you are out there and you haven't given us a thumbs up yet, and you like the conversation, give us a thumbs up. Don't give us a thumb down. If you're going to give us a thumbs down, don't. So smash the like button.
Yep, exactly.
Oh, boom! Yeah, just got just got smashed. You can also give us a love if you like. So where are we going? What else have we got to talk about? Well, we've covered a lot of stuff tonight.
We've covered
And
a lot.
really,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's really
You know,
good.
I
I
think
think,
one. Yeah, I think one other element of it that is kind of I've experienced this. Tim, maybe you have too. Is that through the toughest times we go through, some of the darkest times we go through, it does make us stronger, right?
yeah,
And you kind of mentioned the bully thing. I think that that's a good example. Is sometimes life can be the bully. Sometimes it's situations that come up, whether it's war or a divorce or losing a loved one or failing in business or whatever it is, and each time that happens, when we get through it, we come out a little bit stronger. And so on the
mm,
prevention side, it does give us a little bit more fortitude that next time when the next thing comes, because inevitably it will. Like if that's one thing we can guarantee is that stuff will happen, and it's always going to be, there's positives and negatives. It's like the yin yang thing. There's the good and the bad. There's always going to be bad things that do come up.
yeah,
And each time, if we handle it, we're a little bit stronger and a little bit less affected than the prior time. And I think that really is the trend to try and be on. And what happens is if we don't use some of the things we talked about on, like staying well mentally and prevention and giving ourselves what's needed, then what ends up happening instead is each time we get a little bit weaker and a little bit weaker and a little bit weaker. And that's really where we can get in trouble, because each time it kind of beats us down a little bit further. So even though it might suck during and it's like, man, this is tough, I'm really going through it, realize you came out stronger. And next time, when whatever it is that shows up, you'll be ready, and you'll be stronger and stronger on that trend instead. And that's really, I think, the makings of a great life. In hindsight, when you look at it and say, I overcame that, I achieved that goal, I beat that obstacle, I went through the tough times, I made it out. I found out who my friends and family and loved ones are and who supports me, and now I know how to support other people. I think that's where it really all comes together.
yeah, absolutely. I think, Charles just put a really good comment in. Out of the dark comes clarity.
Mm,
And all you need to do is put the light on. I think that's a good one. Really encouraging point.
absolutely.
Yeah, from Katie. So we've got people watching tonight, which is fantastic. It's great that we get the engagement. And if you guys like what we do, let other people know. We go live every Thursday at 7 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time, or British Summer Time as it is now. And we have this conversation with guests that come in. And I think we've had a really, really good conversation with Jerry tonight. So
Hmm.
they found in children that if you concert cosset them too much and they don't allow them to fail, it's bad for them mentally. Absolutely. I think the schools, particularly, have been fairly bad at it. Where they don't
Mm.
allow competition, they don't allow
Yeah.
children to fail. They don't allow that they treat everybody as winners, which doesn't do them any favours whatsoever. I don't think. I mean,
No.
and they never did it back in my day.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
I actually, Tim, I was on the ending cusp of that. So I graduated school, I think in 2011, 2012. And that's what I noticed. So when I was in school, we were still kind of in that phase of there was competition and there were clear winners and losers. And, if you didn't do what you wanted to accomplish, you improved, you learned, you got better, you looked at, okay, well, where did I miss the mark? And you kind of had to take responsibility for it. And I did notice that change on like, we don't have
Yeah,
that anymore in culture. And I think part of life is, failing, skinning your knees up, learning to do a better job next time. I think that's how we learn through that. And so I think that that's a very healthy part of life. You do get your bangs and bruises and scars and little traumas and things here and there, but that's part of what makes us all who we are. And I
yeah,
think that that's how we improve is we take those experiences and learn from them, and we take the bad with the good and we move forward with it.
yeah. I have something about if you fail at something, then it just gives you a second opportunity to get it right.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's that. I mean that's pure and simple. If you're doing a task and you fail at it, it just gives you a second opportunity to do it right the next time. Or if you fail a second time,
Hmm.
to have another go. It's like that old spider, isn't it?
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
spider just keeps going and going and going. If it fails once, it just keeps going. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's something else. If you are finding things difficult and you fail, it's just gives you an opportunity to get it right the next time.
And I think the only real failure is giving up. As long as you
Yeah,
keep persisting and you don't quit and you keep trying, I don't think that's failure at all. I think that's just the experience of learning and improving and trying again.
absolutely. So I think from oh, blimey, we're coming to the end of the show. We've nearly been at it an hour. It's great. It's amazing how quick it goes by when you're enjoying yourself and
It's
having a
been
great
good. It's been good.
conversation. So, Jerry, have you got any other nice little words of wisdom that you can depart or impart?
You know, um, I think on this topic, one of the things that I guess I'm aware of in my own life, and I kind of try and focus on is I like to have a higher purpose. And I think what you're doing with this show is an example of that. Something that's bigger than we are as individuals. And I've noticed whenever I feel the most exhausted, stressed out, someone had mentioned, not wanting to get out of bed, being tired, kind of that kind of thing. Usually it's when I feel like I failed on my purpose. Like I maybe had a really big goal and a really strong purpose and something happened and maybe I lost that desire or that drive behind it, or maybe I lost focus on it. And so one of the very best things that I think can be done is rekindling that. Looking at, okay, what is my purpose in life? It's got to be bigger than just showing up to work Monday through Friday. It's got to be bigger than just paying the bills. It's got to be bigger than just me as an individual. And so I think that's really where family can come in. I think that helping others can come in. I'm very spiritual, so my church, that's another area where that's much bigger than me. I can contribute there. So I think tying yourself to a bigger purpose is a good way to pull you out of that funk a lot faster. It gives you that energy, and as long as you can keep, you're not always going to have the focus. So it's a thing where you have to refocus. You're going to be very focused on it, and then you might have distractions or whatever come up, and then you might have to be like, oh, okay, I forgot about this bigger purpose. I need to get back on track with it. That's
Mm,
something that for sure can give you more energy. It's almost like being revived, if you will, when you get back on track with the purpose.
absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Well, Jerry, thank you so much for joining this evening. It's been a terrific conversation. I think everybody out there has engaged and enjoyed it as well. So for now then, thanks so much. If you just want to hang about after, we'll have a quick wash up. So, thanks, Jerry. Boom. That's it. Come to the end of the show. I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you've got something from it. If you'd like what we do, let other people know so they can come and join in. They can always watch it on the catch-up. It's always available on the catch-up. It's going to be up there forevermore. All the conversations that we've had on the show are all up there for everybody to watch back and to take something from. If you'd like to come on the show, just message me and we'll try and fit you in for the conversation. So until next week, don't forget, I've got an episode going out on Ordinary People's Extraordinary Stories on Sunday morning. Another great chat. Don't forget the quiz, the live stream awesome quiz on Tuesday. And then again, we're back here next week with another guest or two. So until then, TTFN, ta-ta for now.